Welcome back to another episode of the Second Look Hockey Podcast. As always, I'm your host, David Leo, and I'm joined today with Cristian Ceniti. Unfortunately, we have no producer Mando with us today, so it's just me and Cristian. We already heard producer Mando's takes on that amazing Canada-US Four Nations final. And if you want to hear his takes, as long as with Justin Arnberg and Brandon Brown, you can head to the last episode of the Second Look Sports podcast. But Cristian, dude, I don't even know if we want to get into how was your week, because there was one day in particular I know me and you had amazing day, and that makes up for any of the bad days you had over the past 2 weeks, I would say, especially coming off the round robin loss to the States. I'll be honest with you, after that loss against the States, I was feeling a little bit salty, seeing all the memes, being clowned on from our boys down south, and I was like, come on. In my head, though, I did say to myself, I'm seeing all the memes, but there is that saying of never celebrating too early, and it looks like the U.S. kind of got caught up in that for a second time, because they were starting to do that. If you remember, in 2010 against they beat the Canadians in the round robin. Sidney Crosby goes and breaks their heart in the gold medal game, and this had a lot of similarities to that game, especially with the way that it finished. But we'll get into that in just a sec. Cristian, what are some of your thoughts now coming out of the tournament? And
Yeah, I think first thing we should touch on is really coming out of that game is our thoughts coming in. Like you mentioned there,
mhm.
2010 was front of mind for me the day of that game, just reliving some of those memories, remembering exactly where I was. We were both 10. I remember being sick as a dog and just hoping I could like stay awake for the game. Our TV had broke at the time, so I was watching on basically like one of those huge tube TVs. Yeah, it
Oh,
was yeah, really
that's
vivid,
awesome.
really vivid experience for me. And then yeah, I mean, this time around, it's just yeah, looking through Twitter, seeing everyone bring up like the Haley Wickenheiser clip, alluding to the golden goal, and just kind of putting you in the mindset of this is huge. And I guess this is another question that was on my mind, and I'll ask you as well, is just kind of what did you feel that game was, the hype around it? How big was that game compared to some of the ones in the past? Like how far back do we have to go to really measure the hype? I at first thought, I'm like, well, that was the biggest game since, I mean, you can't go that far back. We had game seven of the Stanley Cup final with Connor McDavid in it, coming back from a 3-0 deficit. I'm like, it doesn't really get much bigger than that in NHL terms. But the more I went through the day and the more we saw some of the stuff coming out on Twitter from down south, like we mentioned, don't have to get too deep into it, but I was starting to not only go back as far as 2010, but I had conversations with people where I was saying, this is like, we're going back to the 72 Summit Series. Like, that's how it felt with
Dude,
just all the
that
undertones.
that for some reason, like, heading into this tournament, I don't think anybody expected that by the end of the tournament, that final game was going to have splashes of 2010, just because of the opponent and the historic rivalry between the two. But also it had splashes of 1972, because like 1972 was more about
It's
the
bigger than a
the
hockey game.
it was the two ways of life, right? And while in that climate in particular, it was the States and Russia, the whole Cold War aspect of it. In hockey terms, you can't get to a geopolitical level to that extent. Like, that is its own thing separately. But what we got with the two ways of the two teams playing hockey, and their cultures finally coming together for the first time, I think it was ever, to that point. If it wasn't ever, it was like over 30-40 years since before the Iron Curtain went up, that we got to see as Canadians what it was like like you got a peek behind that so-called Iron Curtain. Now, while I'm not going to sit here and say that any of the circumstances heading into that game are relatively similar, there were definitely some aspects. There was a heightened sense of nationalism across Canada and even down south, like, which is crazy to think about how one all-star game, as some people wanted to put it, some an exhibition tournament, as some people wanted to put it, could create one of the most palpable hockey events. Like you could genuinely cut the tension in that building with a knife, and that's no hyperbole. Like I don't think I've ever felt more tense. I said it. I had my friends over. I was like, guys, my stomach is in a ball right now. Especially into the in the third period after Canada tied it. I it felt like
Dude, I was
how
doing
I
it like the
was.
running the hands in my hair, like
Yeah,
just
I
covering
felt
my mouth,
how I
all of it.
felt after during the 2023 game 6, like that overtime, which
Yeah. Yeah.
funny to know, I've only had my boys at my house, like my close guy friends at my house 2 times. The first time was that OT winner, John Tavares capturing lightning in a bottle. The second time was this gold medal. So
Hey, brother,
maybe my house
the
needs to
boys are coming
be.
over a lot more often this April then, okay?
Yeah, I think so too. I think
Yeah.
everybody's invited to my house now for this upcoming Leaf playoff run. Yeah, words honestly they can't be put into, like, they can't describe what everybody was feeling because there's just so many emotions.
Yeah.
Um,
To me,
I
it's
think,
like
yeah,
the conversation I think we got to go to then. Just obviously, Canada wins this game 3-2 in overtime. What is the? I mean, the bigger story has to be the goal. But do you want to tackle that aspect first, or
no,
do we
I
want to
think
fill out our our Jordan Binnington apology
yes.
form? Okay,
So
okay,
I think the only way that we get to that overtime is standing on the back of Jordan Binnington, right? In Canada's past, what did I think I said this last episode? It's like you look back at some of the annals of great Canadian goaltenders, at least since 2000. And in particular, there's 2 names that stand out for me, and that's Roberto Luongo, gold medal game hero, made some great saves, worked his way into that 2010 Winter Olympics. He was outstanding, and this was by contrast of him taking over from Martin Brodeur, who wasn't having a great tournament and kind of looking past his prime. Then you flash forward another 4 years. You have Carey Price, who standing like the one of the single-handed like greatest goaltending performances across 5 games in hockey history. Like not even just international play, like in hockey history, the guy was genuinely fantastic. Had a great team in front of him, but he was awesome. Man, Jordan Binnington just single-handedly might have put himself on the panel, or at least he's on a track now to put himself in a
yeah.
panel with those 2 goaltenders in particular, right?
You pick up a
That,
second like gold if we're gonna put them on like the level playing field for nations and Olympics. Like he's got to be at least on that trio of goalies going to Milan next year, right? So if he picks
yes.
up a second gold, he's he's there. He's standing beside those guys in your memories, right? Without a doubt. And I mean,
Yeah.
listen, if you look at the NHL track records, you can't compare the stats, but the one thing that maybe it's so cliche to underestimate, but Jordan Binnington does have a Stanley Cup, right? And even Roberto Luongo at that point didn't, never ended up getting one, right? Carey Price, same thing. There's something to be said about the hunch by the front office and the coaching staff to go with the guy who's got it done in the big time before. As cliche as it is, and as much as we doubted it, like I said, like I'm filling out my Jordan Binnington apology form 5 minutes after that game, maybe even in the middle
I'm
of
signing it
overtime,
during the game,
right?
dude.
Honestly,
Yeah.
because even if the game goes the other way, we're still doing this talk, right?
Yeah,
You're
that
still
not
doing it.
nothing was more evident than starting to sign those forms than less than 5 minutes into overtime, and the States have a bit of an on-man rush. Austin Matthews has the puck, and Jordan Binnington makes one very, very nice save on. I don't know how healthy Austin Matthews is. If that's 100% Austin, like we know he's
Healthy
kind of
enough to
dealing
look
with
really good
something.
in that game and healthy enough to look
Yes,
dangerous. Like if
hundred
everyone
percent.
said it at this point, the guys who scared Canadians the most in that game were Brady Tkachuk and Austin Matthews, who were on that line together. They connect on that first goal, right? So those were the guys. Those were the
Yeah,
guys that were striking fear in your heart. Just like in 2010 for me, I was scared crapless by Zach Parise. He was a
yeah,
young dude at the time, but Zach Parise struck fear into my 10-year-old heart. And it was a very weird feeling getting that from our guy Austin
Austin Matthews.
Matthews, right? So Brittany
Oh,
Kachuk, it's like he's a villain. We're very comfortable with that feeling. But yeah, that was different. Yeah, you got anything on Binner, or else we can get to
no,
the
like
opposite spectrum of the overtime.
that save on Brady Kachuk, I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
I was like rubbing my eyes. I was like, did I
yeah,
just
man.
see that? And just the last point on Binner, man, like the guy on the road especially has an unbelievable track record going as far back as junior when he won the OHL Cup with the Owen Sound Attack for a team that honestly a lot of people kind of wrote off at that point. He's kind of one of those guys where when you write them off, he stands on his head and proves to you just how great of a performer he is, right? Like so going back to the OHL Cup, wins it on the road. 2019 with the St. Louis Blues coming into that season as a near ECHL goalie. The only reason why he's not down in the ECHL is because he says no, right? Takes the Blues on an unbelievable run. They get to the Cup Finals, Game 7 in TD Garden, parallels to this game, and he puts up a heck of a performance, giving the Blues their first Cup in their franchise history. And here we go again, man. Like he's back in Boston on the road, and he backstops that Canadian team to one of the most like gratifying wins, probably in the program's history, and probably in the country's history. Like at least since 1972, that's one of the most gratifying wins. Maybe 2010. Like
I'm putting it up there with them. It's going on the Mount Rushmore. Like what's the fourth one on their Mount Rushmore? Is
that
it 2002?
87. I was gonna say the Canada Cup with Gretzky and
Sure.
Lemieux,
Yeah.
but like yeah,
Yeah.
toss up between the two of them, right? Like
Yeah.
that's about it. Um, then so Connor McDavid, he gets the OT winner, and I saw a lot of people going after Austin Matthews. I guess before that, we'll take you through what we got after the game was John Cooper on the bench, and he's yelling at his boys. He's like, guys, we got to get more selfish. Somebody's got to shoot the puck. And then he calls out to
McDavid.
the he calls out. He goes, McDavid, Marner, get out there, right?
I think I
And
think it was literally just because I just love
or he
how
just says
it
McDavid and
was, yeah,
Marner, and
because he's like
then
somebody
you
get selfish and shoot the puck. Pause. McDavid,
McDavid.
Marner, and that was it. Like it was so direct. It was incredible. And
Well,
whoever
because
cut that clip together that's gone viral at this point, it was just so well done. Is it this is off topic. I hate to derail it and go Leaf here, but the cynical Leafs fan in me says, "Oh my God, if Mitch Dare hits free agency, he's going to Tampa Bay." That's that's that was a very small thought
damn,
in the
I
back of my
didn't even
head
think of
watching
that
that
one,
clip.
dude. I don't know why you put that doubt in
I'm
my head
sorry. I'm
now.
sorry. I'm sorry.
That's
Back to
crazy.
back to back to the breakdown of the
Back
goal.
to good times. Back to good times. Back
Yeah,
to good times. Yeah.
I
So the
apologize.
that comes after an icing that the U.S. weren't too happy with. I thought it was
There was the missed too many men call. Like I
okay. That one, guys.
right.
It's they didn't they. I'll be honest, they didn't touch from the
Yeah,
angles we saw. They didn't touch the
yeah.
puck. It's not a penalty. But the icing one, I was like, okay, that's fine. And thank God we got the benefit of the doubt there with that icing call, and then the play goes back into the U.S. zone. And there was a story I heard from an from the Spinning Chicklets podcast. I was listening to them because they were the ones that was like the American guys on that podcast were talking the most
Yeah.
shakalaka, I'm gonna call it.
And but listen, we've got the Shakalaka Talker of the Canadian variety there too, right? So that's like if you want to hear both ends of the conversation, right, between Biz and Wit, that's where you go.
Yeah, so Wit tells the story. He's in the building for the game and he's with his like 7-year-old son. And his son, who's like his son sees they see the ice or whatever, and and his son looks up to his dad and he's like, Dad, they got McDavid out on the ice. He's like, Don't worry, son, we're gonna get out of this. Then Wit, who's with his dad as well, he's like, he leans over to his dad, he's like, dude, we're so screwed.
You know, bro, I actually haven't listened to the episode, so you telling it
Oh,
makes it an
it's
even
a
better story.
an
That's
all
hilarious.
timer. That's a
Yeah.
it's an all timer.
And
And
McDavid, the boogeyman. This poor
so,
7-year-old kid is gonna see the
dude,
word.
he was
He might look at like a McDonald's sign and get scared now just seeing
the M.
MCD and like
Well, he better not come
just
up
the
to
M, yeah.
Canada. Better not come up here, dude, because we got that big Mac Daddy David burger.
Yeah, yeah.
I almost bought one myself after that night.
Lots of McDavid costumes in on Halloween in the US coming up. I'll tell you that
Oh
next
yeah,
year.
it's the big
Oh yeah.
scary one. And
Yeah.
so the Canadians, Marner gets the puck on the half wall, and the US they have one moment of not realizing. I don't know if it's not realizing who's on the ice or in terms of their zone coverage. I saw a lot more breakdown of people
Tons of
a
breakdowns. Yeah.
lot smarter than me kind of breaking down that play, but what I
Frankie
saw
Corrado
was,
had a really good one, but like our all of our first reactions, where were we pointing the finger?
oh, well, I'll tell you who took a brunt of the blame, and it was Captain Austin Matthews, which did hurt me a little bit, but then I realized the outcome, and I was like, you know what? He could have my sympathies another day. Sorry, Austin, but you don't leave Connor McDavid alone in the slot with time and space. Like, I can't even put into words like seeing that puck go into the net and
Yeah.
the
Did
jubilation
you
I felt.
have kind of I had like the audible gasp when it got to Mitch, like the yeah, because I saw him look at McDavid and I'm like,
The
yes, do it. Right? Like
Yes,
it was
that was a moment where you could see the play
you
building up, and
yeah.
it was the perfect like it was the perfect combination of like so many different things because you have Mitch who can stick handle in a phone booth, who can make magic out of nothing, and that's like a bit of the reason why I think like especially Austin Matthews who plays on his line 82 games of the year for the past almost 10 years now. He's like, I know what Mitch Marner can do with the puck on his stick, and they're giving him a little bit more extra time. And to compensate for that, you leave, Connor McDavid wide open, and it's in the back of the net. Um,
Yeah.
so what
I don't know
else?
if you caught
Yeah.
did you catch Marner yesterday on Hockey Night in Canada before the Leafs game?
Um, I saw something. I honestly I didn't hear what he had to say. Do
Yeah.
you have what he said?
Yeah, like he had a pretty good interview. He always like Mitch has that kind of like shyness to him where he's never fully comfortable talking to the media, even after like possibly the biggest moment of his career, right? Like he's still a little hesitant with everything he says, but they asked him to break down the entire play from the face-off. He did a really good job of it. But I think the thing that stuck out most to me was Cale Makar rimming it around, and he talks about his decision to take the puck off of his skate instead of receiving it on his stick. And it's something that even as me, like who played hockey, and I can't toot my own horn. I played freaking single A, so it's not like I did who knows what. But I didn't even think of that as someone who played hockey. And then you go through it in your head, and you're just like, that was a huge time saver to be able to angle your foot properly there, to take it off of your skate directly onto your stick cleanly in one smooth motion, versus for Mitch, a righty, to have to go on his backhand. He then have to turn around, and by the time he turns around, McDavid's probably covered, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
that was very much a play that I wouldn't say very few players on that Canadian team can make, but just hockey players in general. That's high IQ from Mitch there in a huge spot. And I mean, yeah, like you go through it in your head. had Matthews decided to have no hesitation and directly cover McDavid, like, I don't know how confident you feel in Mitch in that spot because then he has to become the shooter. He'd have to
Mhm.
take a couple steps and try and absolutely snipe top corner short sight on Hellebuck. And yeah, like, who knows what happens in that game?
Well, that's got to be the like such a tough angle, especially for a guy that's not a shooter by nature. Like I still feel
Yeah,
like in that moment he's gonna look for somebody else. If
yeah,
it's not
you're
McDavid
probably
that's
right.
open, he's gonna look for Makar to be open, and maybe that comes down the other way, and that's the end of the game against the Canadians, right? Like so, like it's crazy how plays work out, and yeah, just to think about like what if that puck bobbles on Marner's stick? What if that on the rim it careens off of something else and it's out of the zone? Like who like it's just so crazy to think about the little things that make up the whole game itself. And Canada, they you need a little bit of fortuitous timing and good luck. Canada seemed to get that in strides, especially on that OT winner. And that's
Yeah.
not to say like, dude, Marner and even Matthews to like by extent, like here's a little Leaf talk for you guys. They had fantastic final games. Maybe throughout the tournament they weren't like lights out brilliant, like how we
I
all.
still think Mitch got underrated through the tournament. Like I heard a lot of people basically saying that their thoughts on all three Leafs were negative. For me, like Matthews, you can 100% say that. Um, but Mitch, for me,
Matthews,
I said this last episode, like defensively from game one, I noticed him. I saw him skate with a purpose every single shift. The purpose wasn't always offensively though, right? And
mhm,
listen, I to me, on that Team Canada, the pecking order, I mentioned this last episode, he might be number 5 or 6. So I'm okay with him trying to take the defensive minded approach on his line. You can
mhm.
make the conversation for Matthews, though. He's 1, 2, or 3 in the pecking order for guys who need to be the offensive stars for Team
Yeah,
USA, right? And that's where you can take a little more, not offense, but you can be a little more critical of him for deciding to. I feel like his tournament was. This is even no, this is even being too nice. I think I was going to say like he gave us kind of the Kopitar look of it, but even Kopitar gives us a lot more offensively.
yeah.
He wasn't good enough until that final. He wasn't. Willie didn't like him at all. He really surprised me because he's an international beast. But I just I did want to go to bat for Michigan because I do think he showed us a lot before we even got to the final, personally.
100%. I mean, the guy has an OT, like he had the OT winner in the first game, and everybody kind of
Yeah.
seemingly just forgot about that after game two because of the loss to the States. And I want to say though, in that second game, Austin Matthews on the defensive end, like a dog, not a dog on a bone, but oh my God, was
Yeah.
he gave the Canadians nothing in the neutral zone. And for large parts of that game against Canada in the final, was also doing the same thing. And it was as soon as Austin Matthews was put on a line with Brady Tkachuk, and also for a second there, Matthew Tkachuk. Like when both Tkachuks were on the ice with Matthews at the beginning of that game, I was like, this can go really ugly, really fast. And for a second, for a very, very split second, it was going south fast. And
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about how it took to that gold medal game to unite those three. I guess when you put the Kachucks on any line, at least one of the two, your line's gonna thrive. And
Yeah,
then
when
to
Jack
put
Eichel was
pair
there, they look
them,
good. It was just like throw anyone at center there. It's going to be one of the better lines on the team, right?
yeah, and then you just happen to throw that with the guy who
Yeah,
almost hit 70 goals last year.
yeah.
Crazy.
I want to shout out one player on the Canadian side and one on the US. They're guys that we talked about last episode, but they came up big in the final. Sam Bennett led the team in shots. I think he had 6. Um, talked about it last episode. Came into the tournament second in shots per 60 among all Canadians, second to only Nathan MacKinnon. Agent of Chaos. what a finish on that original the first Mitch Marner primary assist in the game to get Canada back level. Just an incredible play there. Don't care who it is in net when you're going roof like that. Good luck stopping it. And then Mando mentioned him as his player of the game in the original Canada USA battle. Jacob Slavin, he's on everyone's radar now if he wasn't already. He's the type of guy where you'd always see him on your Twitter timeline, especially I've noticed like feels like once a year I get a tweet with a video saying, "Look at Jacob Slavin cover Connor McDavid." Feels like whenever those two go up against each other, there's always something. Um, but yeah, like he's probably the guy who's first in line saying, "Make a defensive defenseman award in the NHL," because yeah, he'd be
Yeah.
a perennial contender with Chris Tanev and some other names.
I
But yeah,
I think I said this in our chat. I think he's the best defenseman, and I have to emphasize that because I'm not saying he's the best defenseman. He's the best defenseman in the league right now, and there's not many others who can compete with his skill. I was so blown away. I like we've seen Slavin in spurts before, but how many times are you going out of your way to watch a Carolina Hurricanes game? As much fun as they've been in recent years, it's tough with especially being on the East Coast, like with the Leafs on all the time. It's hard to watch out of market games, and this was such a great tournament to see guys like him. Thought Brock Faber played pretty well when he was playing. Man, we know how good Charlie McAvoy is, and man, I said it last week. Zach Rowinski. I hope the Jackets make a playoff push because him in the playoffs will be such a treat for everybody to watch. I love Zach Rowinski so much. It's such a shame that he's on the States because I wish he was not American.
yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the game, or I can go like forward into just like
I
kind of
think
the
I'm good on
impact?
game details. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about kind of just
So
the coverage.
I wasn't kidding when I said like I think I said it last week where it was like this felt like one of the like it was gaining so much steam in the States and in Canada. Like everybody seemed to be tuned in to this game. And I've got some numbers to back that up. So this is from Sportsnet. First, we're gonna look at Canada and then we're gonna head over down to the States as well. So per Sportsnet, Canada's victory last night in the Four Nations Face-Off final was the second most watched hockey game ever on Sportsnet, which is ridiculous to think of, averaging 5.7 million viewers and reaching 10.7 million Canadians, with a concurrent audience peaking at 7.3 million when McDavid scored the OT winner. Like those are numbers that Sportsnet quite clearly doesn't even get in Stanley Cup Finals. Now, I'm pretty sure the most watched game on Sportsnet is the Game 7 Edmonton, Florida Stanley Cup final from last
Yeah.
year. And it does make sense because you have a Canadian team in the finals. And if Sportsnet could have Canadian teams in the finals every year, they would love that. But recently that's not the way that it's gone. I'm going to quickly jump over to the States though. ESPN reported that they averaged 9.252 million viewers for Thursday's Canada US Four Nations Championship game. It is the most watched non-Olympic hockey game on record for the program's history. They also drew this is the combined stats, so I'll put that into
Yeah.
perspective. They drew 16.1 million viewers, nearly matching last year's Stanley Cup final game 7 of 16.3 across the United States and Canada. Whew, a lot of numbers there.
Yeah, lots of numbers. I was originally thinking to myself, "Oh my God, this record might stand for 12 months because there's a chance it gets broken in Milan, right? If you get another Canada USA final, I think that would be the best for ratings. But thinking about what time that game will be at, it's not going to be prime time, right?
It won't be. Yeah, you're right.
No. So I
If
don't think,
anything, I think that's gonna be like a 3 o'clock start, especially if it's
yeah,
like or 3 o'clock our time start. So like if you're out west, it's like a lunchtime start, which
Yeah.
yeah, might suck some ratings, but also that could also be the challenge. Like here's your challenge now, ESPN and Sportsnet. How you saw the success of this tournament watching on the most prime time of prime times, an 8 o'clock Eastern start is the best of both worlds for the Eastern and the Western sides of the country. Now, can you take this momentum in 2026 when it's going to be an off schedule, an off primetime schedule starts and events? The Winter Olympics is always going to be the second in the Olympics coefficient rankings. Like it's just never going to draw as much as the summer,
Yeah.
as much eyes, especially from globally. But here's your chance to market one of the best sports in the Winter Olympics and one of the best sports that we have right now. This is your chance now to market all
Yeah.
this growing momentum you've received over the past 2 weeks.
I think momentum is the word that should be on everyone's mind coming out of the tournament, and the NHL needs to execute on all this momentum that they have, really take advantage of it. You've got guys like Kevin Durant going on Twitter and talking about how fans should watch hockey because that's where you get intensity and guys who play the game day in and day out. And yeah, I thought something else that came up that's pretty interesting is this ESPN and MLB split that's going on. This is from CNN. ESPN and MLB to end their decades-long relationship after 2025 season. The source pointed to the NHL playoffs and growing popularity of the WNBA as other programming options for ESPN if MLB decides to leave completely. So
Wow.
they're um they're ripping up this deal prematurely, right? So it wasn't supposed to end in 2025. This is a mutual agreement, and a lot of it too stems from MLB feeling like they're not getting quote unquote proper coverage on ESPN as far as baseball is concerned. So yeah, this is another opportunity, and the fact that the source is name dropping the NHL as someone that maybe ESPN after this tournament is looking at in a different light, right? They got really good coverage, especially just any the two Canada USA games got really good coverage on ESPN in the lead up to the game. The entire tournament, you can say, okay, maybe there should be more, but yeah, that's always where their focus is going to be is the
Mm-hmm.
American tie-in for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, you got to
unfortunately,
take advantage.
you're never going to see a primetime Sweden Finland.
Stephen A is
Um,
never breaking down. Yeah, Sweden,
yeah,
Finland. Yeah, that'd be.
what Patrick Laine did on the power play. Like
Yeah,
you're not going to see, at least in our
yeah.
lifetime, you're not going to see that. Maybe in the
Hell no.
future,
And
who knows?
that's totally fine. But there is so much momentum. And last other thing I want to bring up that came out very recently, I think yesterday, and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of goes against the momentum that we're talking about. But LA has been announced officially as the 2025 draft host for the NHL. Except this is the first draft that isn't totally in person, right? You're only getting top prospects, their families, and some fans. It's being held at like a theater in
The
LA,
Peacock
right?
Theater. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
that's a pretty famous theater.
yeah.
Uh,
It's still
they host one
no.
of they do host one of the big award shows. I forget which one.
Okay,
I'm going to check that
okay.
quickly.
So this feels like it could. And listen, the draft isn't the end all be all. It's not going to derail momentum. Because I think you're probably only watching the draft in the first place if you're more of a hardcore fan. But I do think some casuals watched the NHL draft last year, or at least saw it on their socials and said, "Damn, that looks really cool." I still think, and I know a lot of this was already the take at the time, but it's a missed opportunity to not continue having the NHL draft in person, especially if they could have worked out a deal with the Sphere. Being the first league into that venue for draft was a big, big deal. We got there before UFC held an event, right? Like
Yeah.
you would not expect that from the National Hockey League. That was a huge coup. And I really think they should have maybe reconsidered. I know that some of the excuses they brought up originally for shifting into this direction, which is something the NFL has done and NBA has been doing, is the logistics nightmare of it that NHL owners and clubs have talked about, apparently flying out all the scouts and GMs and yeah, having that set up. Man, the cap's going up like 10 mil next year. You guys have come out and said that the NHL's never been in a better spot business wise. How much is it really going to cost you to continue holding it how we've had it or to get some type of exclusive deal with the Sphere, which is owned by James Dolan, the MSG. Like you have that partnership there. It would have
Mhm.
cost you something for sure. I think that would have been an investment worth making. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up NHL. Take advantage of the momentum you have in every aspect because there's a lot of people that have eyes on you right now. Don't waste them.
Yeah, so just on that note, I think we're just going to take a quick break. But after the break, though, we're going to look ahead to the 2026 Olympics and like who might make the team, who might not. Before the break, so we're going to have a look ahead to 2026. Um, so, Christian, I've got a couple of names. I do have a couple of names for you in mind that could make potentially the Canadian team, and Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini especially. You also said that you have some names as well. What are we thinking now going in for the next 12 months?
Yeah, I figured just for fun, we can take a way too early look at 2026 and maybe not so serious these takes, but just kind of hunches that maybe we have for guys that may make these rosters or may not. One of the thoughts, once again, Leaf minded here. I thought to myself watching that game, Matthew Nyes is on Team USA next year. He's
Oh,
going to be there.
yeah. Oh,
He's
yeah.
gonna be there, and he'll be the heir apparent to like a Chris Kreider in that role, right? Like he already fits that model. I can totally see that. I don't think Brock Nelson will be there. I as much as we talked about some of the Canadian lineup choices, not only in net, but listen, I was there criticizing the Sam Bennett pick when that happened. Um, you can make arguments for some people weren't happy about Seth Jarvis. I went to bat for him. Sam Reinhart didn't have a good tournament. Not that people were mad with that selection, but
Mark
we had a
Stone
lot
as
of talk
well.
about Mark Stone didn't have he had a very quiet
A
tournament. I don't
lukewarm tournament, yeah.
yeah, lukewarm's a good way to put it. But we had so much talk about that we kind of just forgot about the US side of things that their lineup choices in some scenarios weren't the greatest either. Not only just the healthy scratching of Kyle Connor for an injured Matthew Tkachuk, who we can talk a little bit very soon, but leaving a Jason Robertson and Tage Thompson off the roster
Tage
looks
Thompson was the
really bad.
dude. Tage Thompson was the one in my head where I was like, imagine if he was in that final, just all 6'5" of his body.
Just
Like,
instead of like, listen, like Brock Nelson's gonna get traded here at the deadline. Well, I mean, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll get extended, but he's someone who has been in talks this entire season as just one of the expiring UFAs. He's a he's a perennial 30 goal scorer, this and that. Got a little bit exposed in this tournament as just not being on the same level as the rest of that USA roster. Like his
yeah.
name looked out of place by the end of it, right?
Mhm.
Just the name of Tage Thompson would have fit better in that spot. Um, yeah, you mentioned you want to go ahead and talk about like the Bedard Celebrini side of things. I can jump on those after, but what do you think?
I mean, from what I've seen so far of Macklin Celebrini, I really like his shot. And this isn't to discredit Connor Bedard, but we said it last time. Now, okay, I'm going to preface this because we are going to go from NHL style rules to double IHF rules where penalties are called a lot more frequently, which if you were watching that final, kind of felt like the refs threw like just swallowed their whistles for most of the game unless something
100%. Most of the
clear and
tournament.
obvious. Yeah, most of the tournament, unless something clear and obvious happened. So maybe that actually does lend more to the speed and the skill of both Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini, and to that extent as well, maybe that also lends into choices for the states as well going forward. Like
One
maybe
thing I'm
they
going to
don't.
throw out because I didn't realize this until literally I looked it up right now. It's going to be on NHL size dice. So international rules,
Okay.
but on NHL size
So on
dice.
on regulation, like whatever regulation, I guess
Yeah.
you would say, but so it's not as large. So I mean, if it's on regulation size ice, maybe that,
It lends more to the like the rosters we saw because
yeah,
international size ice you can make the argument, oh, you really want Connor Bedard there with all that
extra
space to work
space.
with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned like the IIHF rules should play into the hands of a Connor Bedard, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Oh
should.
yeah.
he 100% shouldn't have been at this tournament, and they made the right choice not bringing him because you could very easily have seen him making the egregious turnover that ends up with a puck in the back of Canada's net. Um,
Probably just
I
not something that he needs right now at this point of his
no,
career at
no,
like 19 years old.
especially with the timing of we already litigated the Paul Bissonnette stuff. Like, imagine if we had that leading up into the tournament and he was coming along, it would have been
Yeah.
a tough look. He would have probably ended up getting healthy scratch for the entire tournament, I think, right?
Hmm.
Unless injuries came up. Any other name? I agree about Celebrini though too. Like he's got the inside track right now. 25 man rosters makes it so that we can throw a bunch of names out there and
Hmm.
they've got chances.
And
Like
they're
Wyatt
gonna need
Johnston
it.
is the guy Canada wise that comes up for me
I
as
think
someone I think will
100%
be there.
you need a 25-man roster because especially in like this tournament was one thing because it's
It was an
very
oversight by the NHL though. Like in hindsight,
yeah,
oversight to not.
it's easy to get guys that are still in the continental in like North America.
Good point.
Maybe
Good point.
they're booking a trip to go to Cabo, but at least you could stop them pretty quickly.
Cough cough. Thomas
You're
Harley.
if you yeah, who I don't even think like we didn't really talk about fantastic tournament. That's just a
Yeah.
quick aside.
Yeah.
God,
He'll
he
hey
was awesome.
he'll he should be there next year, or he's
He
got an inside
I
track.
think he's got a good shot. Yeah,
You
100%.
can take the call up, or you can take the guy who said no to come to the tournament, Alex Petrangelo. I think I know who I'm choosing.
Yeah, yep, 100%. I don't disagree with you there. But if you are in Europe, if you're in Milan, it's a lot tougher to get somebody who's in Vancouver or who's in like the western side of the states. Like that's a
Without a
tough
doubt.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but somebody I don't I'm thinking one of the two. I'm gonna lean more to Zach Hyman. Uh, might be somebody who is on the team next year, at least shortlisted for the team. He's definitely going to be
Yeah.
higher up
I'm gonna
in the
put you on the
ranks.
spot. You can only
Go.
take one. Zach
Zach
Hyman or Tom
Hyman,
Wilson.
Tom Wilson. I knew you were going to say that, and that was my answer. Was I think it was going to be Zach Hyman. Oh, I don't know actually
Tom
because
Wilson just hit a career high in goals yesterday.
yes.
25 on the year now.
So
Now,
here's the
mind you,
thing.
Zach Hyman's career high. What is that?
50 was like what 52.
50
So
something.
Zach Hyman, I think we could say is having a down year compared to the last two seasons where he's broken out to be a lethal weapon on McDavid's line. And then you also have Tom Wilson, who's having a career renaissance right now. I think for me, it just comes down to whoever is playing the best hockey. I know we already did this before with like whoever was playing the best hockey in like September, October, November, but it's tough because like is Tom Wilson going to keep up this like insane goal scoring pace as well as his health, or is Zach Hyman going to kind of rebound going forward? Like if Zach Hyman rebounds and they go to another like deep cup push, is he even going to be healthy come
Yeah.
next February? Right, like he
It's
plays a
so
very
tough.
taxing style.
100%. It's such a interesting conversation comparing the position player side of it versus the goaltending side of it because they did not go with the hot hands
Yeah,
for this
yeah.
team, right? They went with guys whose hands might have been in the freezer. So yeah, like it's interesting that in some ways you do have to go with the hot hand, in other ways it's the quote unquote known commodity. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of any other names off the top of my head. I like I said, I did mention Wyatt Johnston because I think he's a guy who's shown the clutch factor in the playoffs. He's on the outside looking in right now. Like you're still taking on Mark Scheifele ahead of him,
Yeah, I was
but
just
I
about to say,
think yeah,
is Shifley now like is he tracked to be a little bit more like on the inside going forward? Like, no, he wasn't even.
like I said, it's for me. It was like I to me the only reason he wasn't on this roster in my mind on the outside looking in is yeah, I just don't know how they feel about his like locker room quality, and that's just me throwing it out there, but. Like we saw why like Nick Suzuki, a lot of people think Nick Suzuki wasn't called for like world championship reasons. We've seen Logan Thompson not even get shortlisted because of his relationship with Bruce Cassidy and Pete DeBoer. Like there's unfortunately not the greatest reasons for why some guys are maybe not weren't in contention for this roster. So it's like, do we really see that changing next year? Like if the decision is down to Mark Scheifele or one of the bottom six guys from this year, and if it ends up being a pretty similar coaching staff, they're probably going to go back to the guy that they won with.
Also, don't be surprised if you see the exact same goalie trio going into
So that is
2026 as
yeah,
well.
that's where I wanted to go next. You think like yeah, it's what I'm
I
saying here.
think
Like Logan
I think
Thompson, you think could get
Binnington for
double stuff?
sure. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, here's another thing too.
There's no way
Logan,
Montembeau's coming back. There's no way.
okay, I think that third spot is up for grabs.
Yeah.
I think top two are locked down, and I think the third spot's just going to come down to whoever has a pretty decent October at minimum is going to be the pick. Even if somebody goes,
Like Aiden, it even depends on the playoffs this year. So Montembeau's not going to get a chance to show his big game performance. It
yeah,
doesn't look like it. But Aiden Hill can, and he was
yep,
my pick to start this tournament. So
yeah.
he
Well,
can still work on his resume.
he's not going to start next tournament. I think we know that. I like
Unless Vegas goes out and wins the cup next year, like this year, they can do that.
there's no they can. There's no way Binnington isn't starting.
Sure.
You
Sure.
know,
Okay. So, but here's the difference too. The odds of a goalie getting every single start in the Olympics is a lot slimmer than it is in the
yes,
Four
a
Nations. So
hundred
no
percent.
matter what, like you're saying, agreed. Binner will get game one. He won't have full democracy or full control of the net,
Yeah,
right?
full
Someone
ownership.
will get a chance to show their thing as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
a hundred
last
percent.
thing, last thing before we move on from what's been an
Mm-hmm.
absolute awesome freaking tournament and final. And this is more on the negative side is the injury fallout.
Yeah,
Whether it's the wacky McAvoy story of him getting obliterated in the shoulder by I think it was Joel Armia, right?
yeah.
And then having his shoulder treated, but still ending up with an infection. The Bruins being really unhappy with it, them throwing out a statement on it.
Well,
The Matthew
and it
Tkachuk,
was
yeah.
they were upset at the Wild
Well,
medical
yeah,
staff who
yeah,
also misdiagnosed, I believe it was Pat Maroon after they traded for him, I believe it was last year,
yeah,
and they were
yeah.
already kind of salty and sour about that. And then you have Charlie McAvoy, probably the face of their blue line now for the next 5 to 10 years, I would say, going down with an injury, like going down with injury and also them misdiagnosing the injury and leading
See,
to
so I don't. We don't know if it's a quote unquote like misdiagnosis for his shoulder, but you can at least, whenever like it's an infection, you can at least question. Okay, did you take the necessary steps to
did you take
mitigate
all
the chances?
precautions?
It can happen. Like it can definitely happen that you get an infection even under
It
the best
it
care. It
it can
can.
happen, but dude, you are a part of a multi-billion
Yeah.
dollar
I, I
organization.
I don't blame the
I'm
Bruins one
sorry,
bit for
I'm
being unhappy.
yeah,
Not one bit.
I don't blame them
Yeah.
either 100%.
Hey,
And
did you sorry,
yeah.
finish your thought there.
No,
I got a
sorry,
funny thought after, but
and then for McAvoy to like get released from the hospital Thursday afternoon and make his way right to TD Garden to read out the lineups. Everybody kind of like over here in the heat of the moment, I'm like, get this guy off of my screen, especially when he's announcing the lineups and he's like in tears. I'm like, get this guy off of my screen. But now, in hindsight, I do have a little bit of sympathy because I know that is how much Charlie McAvoy wanted to play in that final against Canada, and seeing him like kind of break down in frustration, I would assume, and disappointment. Yeah, kind of just puts into perspective what that tournament meant for everybody.
yeah, like it's another one where it's like if you're a casual watching the tournament and you see these guys go through that and the fallout, hopefully you've earned a little bit more respect for them. Um, I just wanted to go back to the McAvoy thing real quick because one of the words used in that statement is debridement. Do you know what debridement is, Dave?
No, like they
Yeah.
didn't weren't able to bribe somebody.
No, not bribe, like bride, like bridesmaid. It's
Oh,
like the
do debridement. Okay,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah, I
debridement.
heard that
Yeah, yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
I was like, wait a
Sorry,
minute,
sorry.
who's coercing who into doing what?
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, debridement. I mean, listen, I did an undergrad in kinesiology. I should probably know what this word means already, but I didn't. So you just Google it, and you end up with debridement is the medical removal of dead, damaged, or infected tissue to improve the healing potential of the remaining healthy tissue. Removal may be surgical, mechanical, chemical, autolytic, or maggot therapy.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh.
And
Ooh. Ooh.
I saw someone else say like sometimes they'll legitimately like take imagine a steel wool brush
Yeah.
and you're going at bone with that. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So listen,
Well,
hopefully
I
he
do
got the
know.
better of those options. Like hopefully it was
Yeah.
chemical or
I
not a
just
steel wool brush or maggots,
I
but
I genuinely
sorry,
hope
brother.
the
Sorry to bring that
I
up.
I genuinely hope it's 2025. I know maggot like treating wound infections with maggots is like an old world thing. Like that's something out of like Game of Thrones in like the 16th
Yeah.
like century. Like that's what they were doing for the Black Plague in England in the 15th century. It's like I think we
Yeesh.
can I think we've come past the treatment with maggot therapy
Yeah.
now in at least in the modern
In the
medical
year of
sense.
our Lord 2025, give the
Ooh,
maggots
ooh,
away.
just that
Yeah,
whole thing it gives me
the
the
heebie-jeebies.
chills. Do you have anything else about McAvoy?
I
Because
do.
there is also,
Not
yeah.
not McAvoy, but
Oh,
maybe
okay.
this is where you were going. Kaprizov,
Oh yeah.
right?
He's
Like,
I mean, listen, it's gonna go bad. It's gonna go from bad to worse for Bulgarian. Bulgarian announced that Kaprizov was gonna be out longer than they originally expected. They don't know how much longer. They're gonna see how he progresses. He is recovering right now, is what Bulgarian said. But he's saying that Kaprizov's frustrated. He to start the season came out like a house on fire. He was leading Hart nomination votes at least over the first month and a half of the season. He was leading in points for a hot second there too. So to kind of see him and his season derailed through injury is a real tough look. And maybe this kind of speaks on the Wild organization and like their medical staff and
this
maybe
is
some.
three all-star names that we are talking about here related to the Minnesota Wild staff. Um, Setbacks, yeah, like I'm not saying that like the setback wasn't that the medical staff went and tripped Kirill Kaprizov down the stairs. Oops, what a setback. But I mean, maybe it's the fact that who was really tending to him while the entire medical staff was at Four Nations? Like, is it Kaprizov's own staff that maybe he hires through his agency or whatever? It's just like, it just raises questions. And the reality is there's probably nothing like quote unquote nefarious or like some gross negligence, but it's just really bad optics. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah, 100%. Um, there is a common denominator in this situation, right? And you don't, yeah, if you're on that medical staff, you don't want to be a part of that common denominator. And like you
Yeah.
said, I'm not going to sit here and claim they're doing everything in their power to keep Kirill Kaprizov off the ice or keep Charlie McAvoy off the ice, but it is a very bad look if you're,
Yeah.
you know,
Probably it's like, is it causation or correlation? Probably just correlation right now. But the more it adds up, you
it
look at the
starts to
other
leak
word,
in
you look at
it starts to
causation.
leak
Right.
into the causation effects. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. But it kind of seems like there was a lot of people getting banged up. I don't know if you saw the report, but it also kind of seems like Matthew Tkachuk might be out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, like
I
we're gonna have
heard
to
that
wait to
being floated
hear.
around.
Yeah, it was Renaud Lavoie of TVA Sports put that out. I think it was during the Montreal Ottawa game. So and Brady Kachuk didn't play in that game, right? It was more of a day-to-day thing
Matthew.
there, but no, Ottawa and Montreal. Brady didn't play in that game.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, yeah.
that's my
I
bad.
know.
I was
It's
gonna say, wait a minute. Yeah,
Renault's
yeah,
just
you're
out here
right.
giving us Kachuk updates. It doesn't matter who's in the
Doesn't
game.
matter who. It's Keith. It's Keith
Yeah,
update next week.
yeah, so yeah, exactly. But I'll wait for maybe some corroboration from Mr. Freach
100%.
because I don't think we got anything about that on headlines. Like I had an eye on headlines while I was also working. Um, there was stuff about like teams maybe trying to unite the Shen Bros, and then there was Kachuk stuff, but nothing alluding to ending of his season. So that's something to keep an eye on. Like I don't know how much we can like talk about it until we get more confirmation, but like yeah, it just goes back to the idea of bad luck on the medical staff or on Matthew Kachuk for deciding to play in that game, which he plays less than 7 minutes in while you have, as far as we know,
Healthy
healthy Kyle
Kyle Connor.
Connor on the
Hmm.
sidelines. Other thing on headlines though that I wanted to touch on, if you want to maybe give
Yeah,
us the
let's.
details, Mikko Rantanen.
Yeah. So last night, Elliot Friedman said that, and I quote, he understands that during the Four Nation break, the Canes met with Mikko Rantanen's representatives face to face. There were things that were said, and that the Hurricanes made an offer, and that the offer was going to be in the nine digit realm. It's going to be a big offer. And at this point in time, Rantanen and his team has not said yes and not said no. There they're gonna take some time to process everything that's happening, and all the emotions that's involved.
Yeah.
So we haven't gotten anything from Mikko Rantanen. He just was in that tournament. He had 1 goal and 2 points in. Sorry, he had that's from sorry, I'm looking at his Carolina stats right now. I think he only
Yeah,
had a
one
couple
goal,
of
two
points.
points. I think he got
I
a
was gonna
point
say
yesterday.
I was gonna say for Finland, he did have a point yesterday because
Yeah.
I got that update on my fantasy um
Yeah.
on my fantasy app.
And he had the goal for Finland. He had that flutter puck.
Yeah, he
Um,
did.
yeah,
But even
but
him,
listen,
like I know Finland came like there was what were the expectations for Finland?
they were bottom of the barrel for me in terms of just looking at the defense. I had like everything was gravy that they got out of that game, out of that tournament.
But
But
you
he was
probably
not
want
a driving
more.
factor.
Yeah, like if we're
Yeah,
gonna do stock up, stock down on the Finland team, somebody whose stock went right up was Mikael Granlund, who had a couple
100%.
goals against Canada, OT winner, and then stock down kind of turned out to be somebody like Mikko Rantanen. And that's not all to blame on
You could even
Mikko.
put like I'd even put like maybe Sebastian Aho there too. Like as
Yeah, for sure.
they got like they they got to work this out. They got to figure out how to
Well,
unlock
dude,
each other on the Canes.
I've I was saying I said this to my friends yesterday. I was like I would give like Miko needs at least like a month to kind of settle. Like I know it's already been almost a month, but he might need an extra few weeks to settle in because it's not only do you get traded when you don't think you're like you think you're living in Colorado till you retire, right? Especially like for the pedigree that he was bringing. Like, you do you
Yeah,
realistically expect
but
to be traded as Mikko Rantanen at that point?
I think you have to because you're the one dictating the conversation. You didn't
Sure,
like,
but I my guess is that his thought the whole time was, okay, if they want to
yeah,
play a little bit more
it'll work out.
hardball.
It'll eventually happen. That was Nathan McKinnon's thought and Jared Bednar. You're right.
Mhm.
That's a little naive though, and
100%.
I can appreciate naivety from McKinnon and Bednar. I can't from Mikko Rantanen. You can't be more naive like that naive when you're the one negotiating, or like your agent's negotiating the deal. You are the person of conversation here. And I also can appreciate your argument that it takes a lot of time for some players to get used to a new team. On the flip side, and I'll come back to the Mikko Rantanen side of things, but Martin Necas, last 8 games with Carolina, 1 goal, 8 points, playing 17 minutes a night. First 8 games with Colorado, 4 goals, 9 points, playing 23 minutes a night. It's been a much more seamless transition there. And this is a conversation, though, that I brought up when this trade first happened. Are we going to see the Carolina Hurricanes become more like Mikko Rantanen, or are we going to see Mikko Rantanen become a Carolina Hurricane? And I think it's
Mhm.
been that latter.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, we've seen Martin Necas morph into a Colorado Avalanche, right? And so different teams, I almost wonder, it's like how many players in the NHL could you have make that trade for? Like, just insert X name for Mikko Rantanen, and it's the exact same results right now. Like if you put Mitch Marner's name there, is he doing any better than Mikko Rantanen has so far? I would actually guess no, because the Carolina system is a hard one to it's hard to master. It is hard to
Yeah,
master, and it's hard to, just from an offensive standpoint, we haven't seen many guys
get over a point a
flourish in
game.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jay Gensel might have been one of the best guys in his short sample there in
yeah.
Carolina last year, which is part of probably the reason that Carolina looked to made that deal for Mikko Rantanen.
Hmm.
Two things now. I'm wearing a Jays hat, Jays spring training hat specifically from last year.
Oh,
Third
dude,
time I'm
don't even
apologizing for bringing something up this episode, but
don't do it to me, dude.
listen,
I was
listen.
having a good week, man.
Ross Atkins on Tuesday was asked about Vladdy no extension deadline passing. And he said they had a deal for him on the table that would have made him the highest paid J of all time, just in terms of raw contract value. Um, so someone had to clarify that. He said it was like a huge deal that we had out there. And then a reporter
He was
asked,
gonna be the
like
highest
a
paid
record.
player.
It was a
It was a
record breaking
record.
deal. And then
Hmm.
Ross had to clarify Blue Jays record breaking. So when I
Which
hear
doesn't tell you a
yesterday,
lot.
exactly. So when I hear yesterday, there's a 9-digit deal out there for Mikko Rantanen from the Carolina Hurricanes. Brother, that doesn't tell me anything, because that means it's a 12 and a half times 8-year deal. And to be honest, that was the floor I was thinking for Mikko Rantanen. I'm sorry, if you think that Mikko Rantanen's only taken 12.5 million, which is what Artemi Panarin got as a free agent the year after John Tavares from the New York Rangers, and the cap has moved up this much since, you're nuts. We're talking
Yeah,
13 and a half. We're talking
a
14
minimum,
million.
a
Even
minimum
if he has a
13.
down back half of this year, someone will pony up for that. He's not the
Oh
type of
yeah,
guy that you look at half of a season and say, actually, I'm second guessing how good he is. He is a borderline. This is once again his floor. 12.5 million is the floor AAV. And I think top 10 to 15 player is his floor if you're looking at his like the NHL landscape. That's where he
hmm.
is right now. And on a good day, he's in the top 10. I just I can't do anything with a nine. Like if like I said,
Yes.
if it is 12 and a half times 8, that's not going to get it done. I'm not surprised he hasn't taken that deal and is still thinking and waiting for more.
He probably laughs at that deal and says, "Well, now I know I'm not signing with it because that's not a serious offer."
Negotiations have to start somewhere. Like you start, if you're the
Yeah,
team you're starting here, if you're the player you're starting here, you got to meet in the middle. So the question is how far along. If they've been having face-to-face meetings, is Carolina only willing to get this far? Because they got to meet in the middle. And if that's Carolina's middle, we have a problem. Where it goes next, this would kind of be unprecedented. I don't know if you can ever recall a player of like this magnitude getting flipped.
double traded.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
can't, and I'm a little not pissed is not the wrong
Well,
word, because this makes great entertainment. Yeah,
the only one
you
that
got
was
one.
near half, like that was close, was last year after the Canucks acquired Elias Lindholm. Immediately after, they were looking
Yeah,
to ship him out right away, just because of fit and that type of and those
it didn't
reasons,
go well to
and it
start. Yeah,
didn't
it was a little bit. I think it was a little bit earlier in the year. They had a little bit more
breathing
room to
room. Yeah,
work with, and
for
ultimately they
sure.
kept him because they got more into the playoff conversation. Um, I'm just worried now, like this is gonna hold up the trade market again,
It might.
right? Until a decision is made, and I don't think, like Ross said this as well, deadlines matter. Deadlines are there for a reason. They are what push teams and players to get deals done. I feel like this goes right down to the deadline. Elliot even said they might even kick it towards after the deadline, take their chances and go on a run and pray to God that they can sign him afterwards. But
Mm.
I just worry now, outside of the entertainment that has been the Mikko Rantanen saga, what does that do for the NHL trade market? Because it's trade deadline's coming up real soon here. We're
Couple of
talking
weeks.
what? I think we're now less than 2 weeks, right? February is a short month.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
20. It's March 7th, right?
yep. Yeah,
So yeah, less than 2 weeks for
maybe
sure.
yeah, 2 weeks maybe to the day.
Uh,
You got
Speaking
anything else on
of,
Mikko Rantanen?
no, I mean, I do kind of want to see them trade him again, though. Just
Listen, like I
for
said, entertainment specific to that conversation,
yeah,
that would be sick. That would
for
be
for
insane.
selfish for selfish
Yeah.
purposes, I want Mikko Rantanen trade part two to
I
happen.
just don't want
But
it to come to the expense to all the other trades because we need to see
yeah,
those too. That's all.
100%.
That's
Just free
all.
up the market a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also Seth Jones did he hand in a trade request?
He has formally asked for a trade over the Four Nations tournament break. He um he had an interview somewhere where he said he wants to play for a contender or no, like he wants a chance to win. That's what I think
Mhm.
he said. Sorry, I you know what, I didn't actually
He
grab the right source here, but yeah, he had a quote like that, and now he's formally asked for a trade, and the talk is he wants to go to a contender.
I mean, I don't blame him, especially like when was the last time Seth Jones was in the playoff? It was definitely oh, it was probably was it with the Blackhawks when they by happenstance made it into the 2020 like
I don't I don't
pre-bubble?
I
Was
don't
he there
think
yet?
he's yeah, I'm gonna double check that because I was actually thinking it might be the
The
bubble
Blue
season against
Jackets?
the Leafs, right? I'm gonna
Yeah.
look though. Anyways, you like you said, nice of him to think like to go to a contender. Do you think a contender would want him?
Um not at the price point. I think if it's um 75% retained, like if you get a three-team deal going in, what is his cap hit right now? Is it
I
oh
believe
it's
it's 9.5. I think,
I thought it was
yeah,
like
I
eight,
think
dude.
no,
Oh
no, no.
dear
But
God.
listen, it is 9.5. He's got 5 years left on the deal. He's in year three. He's 29. Actually, no, he's 30 years old. Um, I don't think you're getting 75% retained.
I don't think you can.
I think you're lucky to end up with 75% of the contract remaining, to be honest. Now, at the same time, and yeah, just to confirm for you, you know what? That bubble season was the last time he was in the playoffs against the Leafs there.
Mm,
Um, and him and Werenski were lights out that year.
yeah.
Um,
That's why.
they carried.
Give me Zach
Anyways,
Werenski again.
yeah. So I think you're looking at like 75% remaining on his deal. So you retain 25%, take him to about like 7.5 ish, a little bit more. Or sorry, a little bit less. I actually think we might be at the point where Seth Jones is underrated. Like he gets so much slander,
Yeah.
deservedly so. He has not been good, but it's like at a certain point, he's I think he's still second pairing
He's
quality. And
capable.
you can't pay 9.5 million for a second pairing defenseman today.
That's the
But
problem.
we're not too far away from that being closer to what the price is because of the cap. So I think the perfect spot for him isn't a contending team like this year. It's a
Mm.
team with a ton of cap space on the rise that can afford to pay tomorrow's price for a second pair defenseman. That's what he makes right now.
I do have a team. I don't know if you have a
Okay.
team in
I
mind.
actually, you know what? I'm gonna go look now, but I
Because
want to
I
hear
know
your team. Yeah.
I did hear the interest. Who did you bring up was the last team he played a playoff game for?
Columbus, you think I is that what
Maybe
you're saying?
Columbus Blue Jackets a swap with an Ivan Provorov, who they are also looking to move off of. Would
So,
something like that interest both parties?
um, yeah, I can't even like place like what the value is for Seth Jones without looking at the comps because Provorov is a free agent at the end of the year.
Mhm.
So what you'd basically be doing is wiping yourself of Seth Jones's contract, making it disappear. The retention obviously
For
matters here
Chicago,
because
yeah.
yeah. So I think Chicago they have two retention spots taken up right now. One is McCabe. I cannot remember who the other one is. Mikko Rantanen. That's who it is.
Oh yes.
Um, yeah. So they have one spot free right now, and their other two retention spots are gonna be freed up at the end of the year. So they'll
Mhm.
have three spots to work with starting next season. Do you want to have one of those spots taken up for 5 years with Seth Jones? I
I mean,
actually
there
think
comes a
you can. I think it's palatable because Chicago's already shown like the McCabe deal that he retained on that for what, 2 years, two and a
2 years.
half years.
This is
So
double that though.
yeah, I don't. This is double that. Is there a deal where you can trade him without retaining? I don't know. Maybe the deal to look at is actually Jacob Trouba.
Ooh,
I'm
yeah,
gonna go
going to
look at what that
Anaheim.
Jacob Trouba trade was again. Because
Was
I remember the original thought was it
Vakanainen
was not, yes, Vakanainen, um,
and a
and a
fourth.
fourth.
Wow.
So that was like a wash in your hands of the Jacob
Mm.
Trouba deal. What is Jacob Trouba's number again? We're basically workshopping this live, which is fine. It's
Nine.
more
I'm trying to remember our
I think no, I think
conversation
it's eight
because
something. But I
yeah,
know it's
eight
in the
five.
eights, but what I want to know is what the term is left on his deal there. Because that's the thing. You got to find the
Ah,
comparable for
yeah.
his.
I
He's in.
mean,
See, this is the thing. He's in year 6 of 7. So if that's all you get for Jacob Trouba, and I think I would still prefer Seth Jones over Trouba right now,
yeah, for sure.
but the value's not really there. I throw out your team. You had Columbus as your other team. I saw
You
people
did.
like throwing out Dallas because of the Miro Heiskanen and Tyler Seguin thing on LTIR. You can take that
Yeah.
swing for this year, but once again, like I think
But
it's a
what
team that
about
needs to have more cap space.
yeah, it's like and then also like what about, when Thomas Harley like he's developing into something legitimate right now. It's like, do you
Right,
want to
right D
maybe
has been their like weakness for a long, long time.
yeah,
And I think Harley is a lefty too.
he is a
But
lefty.
I
Yeah, you're
agree
right.
with you. Like at that point, it's like how much of a sacrifice do you want to make on the cap for upgrading our right D? Like, listen,
What's that other defenseman that they have? Is it Leon Bichel?
Lean Bixel, yeah,
Bixel?
he's pretty good. I think he's another lefty though too, but he's another one. Like he'll be, yeah, he is a lefty shot. So like they're set. They're set
On
on
the
the left
left.
side.
Yeah.
S. Lindell is a lefty who I think can play the right side. But yeah, then you're looking at Labushkin, Cody Ceci, and Matt Dumba, which are all
Ugh.
right. Like that's a thing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of another team where it's like, okay, you can afford to take on most or all of his salary right now, um, because of the cap space. I don't know. I don't
It is a
know.
tough one. Well, here's the other thing too. It's like he put in the trade request. It's kind of
Yeah.
to be determined if Chicago upholds their end of the bargain and ships him out. But if he puts in a trade request now, this maybe might be one of my last points is if he puts in the trade request now and then you kind of dismiss it and you push it off to the side, at what point does that then become a negative asset for you? Like maybe this is just the time to cut loose from Seth Jones. Like who knows
I
what
think they would be willing to move on from. I don't think that they're.
I think they will be
Yeah.
too. But
Yeah.
at what point does Chicago just have to give up and say this is the most we can
Yes.
get out of him? Like this is
Yeah.
where we cut our losses, and it's better for both sides if we just
Yeah.
terminate the marriage right now and we cut it from the head.
Yeah. Hey, Mikko Rantanen, hurry up and decide so that we can get the Seth Jones trade going. Okay.
I
Okay.
can't wait for that next week. I'll tell you that. That's coming off. That's I'll bet you right now that's coming out right after this episode. Like we're
Fine.
done recording.
Fine by me.
That was a Canada USA filled episode with tinges of the NHL. But as the NHL machine gets back into motion and we ramp up trade talks, we're gonna have so much more content for you guys in the coming weeks. And I honestly I can't wait. Don't forget to keep a link on the Second Look Sports channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys here next week.